In the old winding streets of 19th century Paris, a story so strange and so brutal it seemed to defy all logic took hold of the city's heart. A chilling event had occurred, whispered about in cafes, debated in parlors for weeks to come. In a fourth-floor apartment on the Rue Morgue, a respectable but quiet street, two women, a mother and her daughter, were discovered savagely murdered. This was not a simple crime of passion or greed. The scene was one of bewildering violence and inexplicable circumstances. The room where the bodies were found was locked, bolted from the inside with no apparent way for a killer to have escaped. The mystery gripped Paris, fueling fear and wild speculation. The newspapers were filled with lurid details, each account adding another layer of confusion to the already impenetrable puzzle. The police, for all their experience, were utterly confounded. They had no suspects, no motive, and no clear theory of how such a thing could have happened. Our window into this extraordinary mind is provided by the narrator, a man of more conventional intellect who is nonetheless captivated by his friend's genius. He explains how he and C. Auguste Dupin came to share their peculiar and isolated existence in Paris. They met by chance in a library, both reaching for the same rare and obscure volume, and a connection was instantly formed. The narrator was struck by the breadth of Dupin's knowledge and the quiet intensity of his presence. Dupin, descended from a noble family but reduced to poverty by misfortune, possessed a mind that was his only true wealth. He lived with a stark frugality, his needs simple, his passions entirely intellectual. Their life together was unconventional, a retreat from the bustling world outside. By a mutual whim, they shut themselves off from the daylight, living by the light of candles, even during the sunniest hours. Their days were filled with reading, writing, conversation. When dusk fell, they would venture out into the city streets, not for social calls or entertainment, but to wander and observe their discussions continuing late into the night as they analyzed the tapestry of human life around them. The narrator confesses his profound admiration for Dupin's analytical abilities, which he describes as something akin to a second sight. Dupin, he explains, possessed a unique talent for what he termed ratiocination, a process of rigorous, step-by-step logical deduction. He could seemingly read the narrator's thoughts by tracing an intricate chain of observations and associations that led from one idea to the next. This was not magic or guesswork. It was the result of an incredibly sharp and practiced mind that missed nothing and connected everything. The crime that captured the attention of all Paris was one of shocking and seemingly supernatural brutality. The victims were Madame L'Espanaye and her daughter, Mademoiselle Camille L'Espanaye. Their bodies were discovered by neighbors and police who were forced to break down the door of their fourth-floor apartment on the Rue Morgue. What they found inside was a scene of utter chaos and horror. The room was in complete disarray, with furniture broken and thrown about. A bloody, straight-edged razor lay on a chair. Clumps of gray human hair were found on the hearth. The body of the daughter, Camille, was discovered first, and in the most ghastly of circumstances. She had been strangled with such force the marks of the fingers were deeply bruised into her throat. Her corpse had then been thrust up the narrow flue of the chimney, feet first, requiring the combined effort of several strong men to dislodge it. In the courtyard behind the building, the searchers found the body of her mother, Madame L'Espanaye. Her throat had been cut so savagely that when they attempted to lift her, her head fell off. Her bones were shattered, indicating she had been beaten with a heavy club or thrown with tremendous force. The most baffling element of the crime, however, was the state of the room itself. The single door to the apartment was locked and bolted from the inside. When the party of neighbors broke it down, it was clear no one could have exited that way and resecured it. The two windows in the room were also securely fastened from the inside, with nails driven into the sashes that seemed untouched. The chimneys were too narrow for any adult human to pass through. There appeared to be no secret passages, no hidden exits. The murderer or murderers had committed these horrific acts and then vanished from a hermetically sealed room. This impossible situation left the police and the public grasping for explanations. How could a killer escape from a room locked from within? The sheer physical strength required to inflict such damage and to stuff a body up a chimney seemed superhuman. Furthermore, a significant sum of money, Over 4,000 francs in gold, which Madame L'Espanaye had recently withdrawn from the bank, was found untouched in the room. This ruled out robbery as a simple motive, deepening the mystery. The scene presented a set of contradictory facts: unimaginable violence, no clear motive, and an impossible escape. Faced with this grotesque and inexplicable crime, the Parisian police did what they knew how to do. They went to work methodically, but without imagination. They interviewed a host of witnesses who lived in the neighborhood or were part of the group that discovered the bodies. They described hearing two voices during the struggle. One was clearly a Frenchman, speaking in agitated tones. But the other voice caused great confusion. It was described as shrill, harsh, and guttural. A French confectioner swore it was the voice of a foreigner, possibly a Spaniard. An English tailor thought it sounded like a German. A Dutch shopkeeper was certain it was not a German and insisted it was a Frenchman. An Italian undertaker believed it was a Russian. Each witness was certain of what they heard, yet none could agree on the language or nationality. The only thing they all agreed upon was that the voice was foreign and spoke a language they did not recognize. This cacophony of opinions led the police nowhere. The police investigation proceeded along conventional lines. They examined the crime scene, collected the obvious pieces of evidence. Their attention soon fell on a bank clerk named Adolphe Lebon, the man who had delivered the 4,000 francs to Madame L'Espanaye just days before the murders. Because he was the last known person to have seen the women alive and was connected to the money, the police, desperate for a lead, arrested him. This was a classic case of jumping to the most convenient conclusion, a move born of pressure and a lack of other viable suspects. Dupin, however, reading the newspaper accounts of the investigation from the comfort of his darkened study, was deeply critical of the police's approach. He saw their failure not in a lack of effort, but in a failure of intellect. He noted that they were too focused on the what and not enough on the how. They were unable to think outside the established patterns of human crime. Their methods were sound for ordinary cases, but this case was anything but ordinary. It was, as Dupin remarked, too simple in its strangeness for them to solve. They could not see the solution because it lay beyond the boundaries of their experience, and they lacked the creative reasoning to venture into the unknown. Section 5. Police floundered, Paris gripped by fear and speculation. C. Auguste Dupin began his private investigation from his armchair. He did not rush to the scene or interview witnesses at first. Instead, he collected every newspaper report and the official police testimony. For Dupin, solutions came from quiet, focused thought, not running around. He believed an analytical mind could solve a case more accurately by studying documented facts. This method, ratiocination, was the cornerstone of his genius. Ratiocination was a blend of logic and imagination. It meant breaking a problem into fundamental components and examining them without prejudice. He looked for what was unusual, the detail that didn't fit the pattern. While the police were confused by conflicting accounts of the second voice, Dupin saw that second voice as the crucial clue. An Italian heard it. An Englishman heard it. A Spaniard heard it. A Frenchman heard it. None agreed on the language, so Dupin suspected it was not human language at all. Dupin explained his approach to the narrator, contrasting it with the police's simple cunning. The police were like a man who plays checkers well, limited, straightforward moves. Dupin compared his method to chess or whist, deeper analysis required. The analyst must observe carefully and identify with his opponent, understand their thought process. Here, the opponent was the mystery itself. Dupin aimed to see the events as they must have occurred, not as a human would. He chose to visit the scene only after forming a preliminary theory from his armchair analysis. He used his connections to get permission from the prefect of police to visit the Rue Morgue apartment. With permission secured, Dupin and the narrator made their way to the now silent apartment on the Rue Morgue. The house stood grim and foreboding, the scene of the crime still cordoned off from the public. Once inside the fourth-floor room, Dupin began his examination, which was markedly different from the official police search. He did not simply look for obvious clues, he seemed to absorb the entire environment, his eyes moving slowly and deliberately over every inch of the space. While the narrator saw only the gruesome remnants of a violent struggle, Dupin saw a collection of facts waiting to be properly arranged. His attention was drawn to details that the police had either missed or dismissed as unimportant. He carefully examined the bodies, which had been left in the room. He noted the peculiar nature of the bruises on Mademoiselle L'Espanaye's throat. They were not the marks of a human hand. He then took a closer look at the small clump of hair that had been found clutched in Madame L'Espanaye's hand. The police had assumed it was her own hair, but Dupin, upon inspection, realized it was not human hair at all. It was coarse, tawny, and clearly belonged to some kind of animal. This was a critical piece of physical evidence that supported his developing theory. Next, Dupin turned his attention to the impossible escape. He methodically inspected the windows, while they appeared to be securely nailed shut. It was broken. The head of the nail was intact, but the shaft had snapped. He then discovered a hidden spring mechanism near the window frame. When pressed, it allowed the sash to be lifted just enough for someone, or something, to slip out. Upon release, the window would slide shut again and the broken nail would fall back into its hole, making it appear as if it were still securely fastened. The escape was not impossible. It was merely cleverly concealed. Finally, Dupin lay on his back and looked up the chimney flue where Mademoiselle L'Espanaye's body had been found. He was not looking for a passage, but assessing the sheer strength required to perform such an act. He also noted a small, greasy ribbon tangled near the hearth, a type used by sailors to tie back their hair. Each of these small, seemingly insignificant details, the non-human hair, the pattern of the bruises, the broken nail, the hidden spring, the sailor's ribbon. For the police, they were random oddities. For Dupin, they were the precise and logical points that, when connected, would form a clear and undeniable picture of the truth. Back in the quiet of their study, Dupin began to assemble the facts for the narrator, laying out his chain of reasoning with calm precision. He started with the two most peculiar aspects of the crime: the strange, non-human voice, the incredible, almost supernatural agility, the strength displayed by the killer. The police were stuck because they were trying to find a human who fit this description. An impossibility. Dupin's intellectual leap. The perpetrator might not be human at all. This single idea made all the other strange facts fall into place. He walked the narrator through the evidence. The voice could not be identified as any language. It was not human. It was the guttural cry of an animal. The immense strength to shatter Madame L'Espanaye's bones and to force her daughter's body up a narrow chimney was not superhuman, but brute animal force. The agility to climb to a fourth-floor window, enter the room, and escape via a hidden spring mechanism was beyond a man, but natural for a climbing creature. The lack of motive, the money left untouched, also pointed away from a human criminal. Dupin then presented the physical proof. The tuft of tawny hair found in Madame L'Espanaye's hand was not human. He compared it to samples and confirmed it belonged to an ape. Specifically, hair of an orang-utang from the East Indian Islands, a creature known for immense strength and ferocity. The marks on Camille's throat did not match a human grip. Dupin drew them from memory and showed how they matched an orangutan's grasp as described in a book of natural history. The crime was committed by a wild animal, not a madman. Only one question remained. How did an orangutan get into a fourth-floor Rue Morgue apartment? Such an animal must have an owner, a keeper, who had lost control of it. The first voice witnesses heard, thought to be French, likely belonged to this owner who followed the creature and watched in helpless terror. The small greasy ribbon found was the final clue. It was the kind sailors commonly use. A sailor would be the likeliest person in Paris to own such an exotic pet, perhaps brought back from a long voyage. Having deduced the what and the how, Dupin now moved to find the final piece of the puzzle, the owner of the orangutan. He devised a simple but brilliant stratagem. He placed a small advertisement in a local evening paper, one known to be read by sailors. The ad stated that a very large, tawny-colored orang-utang of the Bornese species had been found and was now in the possession of C. Auguste Dupin. It invited the owner to claim the animal at his residence in the Faubourg Saint-Germain. Dupin reasoned that the owner, who was likely innocent of the murders themselves but terrified of being implicated, would be desperate to recover his valuable and dangerous property. Dupin prepared for the owner's arrival. He armed himself with a pistol, not knowing if the man would be violent or desperate. He and the narrator then waited. Late that evening, a heavy footstep was heard on the stair, followed by a knock at the door. A large, robust man entered a sailor just as Dupin had predicted. He appeared nervous and agitated, but relieved to have found his missing animal. He offered a reward for its return, eager to conclude the business and be on his way. But Dupin, in his calm, measured tone, had other plans. He did not immediately accuse the man. Instead, he steered the conversation toward the murders on the Rue Morgue, remarking on the profound mystery of the case. The sailor grew visibly pale and distressed. At that moment, Dupin calmly stated that while he did not believe the sailor was guilty of the murders, he knew everything that had happened. He demanded a full confession, not to turn him over to the police, but to clear the name of the wrongly accused, Adolphe Lebon, and to bring the truth to light. Overwhelmed, the sailor saw no choice but to tell his incredible story. The sailor confessed that he had brought the orangutan back from Borneo. The animal was remarkably intelligent and had learned to mimic his owner's actions, including how to shave with a straight razor. One night, the ape escaped its closet razor in hand and fled into the streets. The sailor pursued it, following it to the Rue Morgue. There, the creature, seeing a light in an upper window, climbed up the building's lightning rod and entered the apartment. The sailor watched in horror from below as the ape, attempting to shave Madame L'Espanaye, panicked at her screams and flew into a murderous rage. It killed both women with its immense strength. The sailor's confession brought the case to a stunning conclusion. His story perfectly matched every detail of the crime scene: the razor, the manner of death, the impossible escape. Accompanied by Dupin, the sailor reported the facts to the police. The prefect was chagrined. An amateur had solved the case, but was forced to accept the truth. Adolphe Lebon was immediately released from prison. The sailor was not charged. He wasn't legally responsible for his animal. The murders in the Rue Morgue were officially closed. But the story did more than solve a fictional crime. It created an entire literary genre. Poe, with C. Auguste Dupin, invented the first modern detective. Dupin is the blueprint for countless investigators to come: Sherlock Holmes, Hercule Poirot. He is the eccentric genius outside the official system, using intellect and observation to see what others miss. His ratiocination became the detective standard. The gathering of clues, logical deductions, the final dramatic reveal. The tale explores themes that still resonate. It's an allegory for the triumph of reason over chaos and fear. A seemingly supernatural event sends the city into panic. Only Dupin stays calm, trusting logical analysis to impose order. The story blurs the line between man and animal. The orangutan mimics human behavior, unleashes primal violence, reflecting the untamed aspects of nature, a force human reason must comprehend and contain. Ultimately, the story endures because it's more than a puzzle. Poe champions the power of the mind. The locked room mystery is a metaphor for impossible problems. The walls that confine us are often of our own making, built from fear, prejudice, and a failure to think creatively. By showing Dupin dismantle the impossible room brick by brick, Poe gives a timeless lesson. No mystery is too great, no darkness too deep for the illuminating power of a clear, rational mind.